Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today is a bit of a hard topic. I'm going to be talking about coming to terms with aspects of my mental health condition or conditions, like however you want to put it. So just for a bit of background information, because I haven't ever done a my mental health story video, which I will do, but I kind of want to save it for a certain milestone in subscribers or views. So we'll see. So to give you a bit of a background of my mental health, currently I am diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. That is my official diagnosis. There's been a lot of sort of issues relating to borderline that I've had to come to terms with, and I wanted to talk about today. So one of the main things that I had to come to terms with was scars, and having scars and coming to terms with personally having to come to terms with having them, but also having to develop the confidence to not care if strangers stare or not care if someone says something, and having, I suppose, the skills to say something back about them and just say, yeah, that's in my past, but it's not what defines me. So I might insert a couple of stories with this, because I do have a couple of stories regarding my self-harm scars that I can think of. So to put into context, I have scars mainly on my inner wrists and my thighs. So that they are the two main areas that I self-harmed. And now I will go out and I will show my scars, not necessarily show them, but like not intentionally cover them up. Whereas a few years ago, I would go out of my way to cover up my scars, whether that be with bracelets or long sleeves or makeup or anything. I would go out of my way to cover them up because I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed that I was that unwell, that I felt that I needed to harm myself. And I suppose as well, because when I was younger, mental health was still quite taboo in the fact that, like, you just didn't talk about it. You didn't talk about mental health as much as we do today. Like, I've struggled with my mental health about 8 or 9 years now, and even in those 8 or 9 years, I have seen a huge shift in terms of who talks about mental health and how much it's talked about. Like, pretty much mental health is quite a big topic now compared to when I was first starting to struggle at 17. Nobody would talk about it. And years later, when I'm sort of 20, 21, and to put it in context, I'm now 25. When I'm like 20, 21, I'm finding out, not necessarily finding out, but some of my school friends are then posting on social media saying, oh, I self-harm and I'm finally coming to terms with my scars. And they were the people that you would have just never expected to be the ones who self-harm. And I think that's one of the big misconceptions. So not everyone that self-harms is one of the timid, shy girls in the school. You can be one of the most outgoing and like outwardly outgoing person in the year group, and you still struggle with self-harm, and it doesn't mean anything, like the way that you outwardly present yourself. So coming to terms with my scars, there's been a few. I'm going to literally just tell two stories, one that is positive and one that is negative. So let's start off with the negative story. I go into A&E, and I'm not going into A&E for anything mental health related or anything self-harm related. I'm going in because I've fallen over and I've hurt my wrist. My wrist is all bruised, pretty much black and blue, and it's because I've fractured my wrist. I go into A&E, I get called in by this nurse, and she examines my wrist. And one of the first things she says, after obviously finding out who I am and what I've done, is, oh, you've done a good job of that, haven't you? And I'm sitting there thinking, oh yeah, it's very much bruised. There's a lot of bruising, isn't there? And she goes, oh no, your scars. And I was like, I'm not even here for my scars. I'm here because my wrist is purple and blue. not blue, but like bruised. And you're commenting on how I've done a good job by harming myself. And I'm like, excuse me? And she's like, yeah, you've got quite a few scars. And I'm like, why? Firstly, why are you commenting on my scars? Secondly, I'm not even here for a mental health reason. And it was also said in a way that was kind of like, I've done a good job. And I'm like, you're praising me for harming myself. Like, and obviously that's my literal brain taking it very literally and being like, she's praising me for doing self-harm. But at the same time, why are you talking about my scars and in the way of, you've done a really good job? And I'm like, nah. So I basically had to turn around to her, and that was the first time that I actually stood up for myself, and I said, I'm actually not here for my scars. And she said, oh, right, sorry. And then she got on with the treatment. But I just found it a bit weird that she thought it was appropriate to comment on my scars. Like, yes, you can look at them, that's fine. But you're commenting on my scars, which is making me feel even more insecure than I already do. And then you're telling me I've done a good job. So I'm now going to move on to the positive story. And this is a really, really short story because it wasn't really something that happened, and it wasn't really a long-winded thing. So I get on the bus, it's really, really crowded. This is before COVID, and I am one of the people who are standing up because there's no seats. I'm holding to a bar, and you can see, obviously I didn't have my Fitbit on, so literally you can just see my wrist. And in real life, my scars are really visible, and because it was a hot day, and when it's a hot day, my scars literally pop out so much. And it gets embarrassing, but it was too hot to wear like a long sleeve. So I'm sitting there, I'm standing there, I'm holding on to this bar and just wanting to get on with my day. And then this lady who is sitting you have some seats towards the front of the bottom, like the ground floor of the bus, that can fold up for things like wheelchairs and prams. And it was so busy and there was no wheelchairs or prams and people were sitting on those seats. So one of the ladies, she gets up to get off and she stands up and she looks at me and she goes, I love your tattoo. And I goes, oh, thanks. But then I look at it and I'm like, well, she could obviously see there were scars. But it made my day. It absolutely made my day, to the point where I walked off that bus and I was smiling thinking, she knew there were scars. Like, my scars were really obvious, and you've commented on my tattoo, and it made me feel really cool because I was like, you've made me feel like normal, and that's all I could have asked from that woman. And she walked away, and I didn't get a chance to say thank you. So if you're watching this, thank you, because that made me feel really, really appreciated and human. So pretty much, they are the two stories. So overall, coming to terms with my scars, there wasn't really a turning point or any advice that I can give anybody who is struggling with coming to terms with their scars. I think it is pretty much a very personalised and individual journey. There is nothing that I can say to you to do or not to do, because it's not like it's a manual. It's not like, oh, at this particular age or this far into your scars are healed, you'll feel comfortable going out. It's a case of when you feel comfortable, and there's no shame in not feeling comfortable. Just because I stopped self-harming and then it took me over a year to become comfortable. Some people, it will take them years upon years upon years to come to terms with their scars personally, and then to be able to be like, I don't care what people think, I don't care what people say, and I made that leap within a year, but some people it takes longer. So there's no shame in taking longer to come to terms with having scars on your body, because at the end of the day, as society, we are taught the norms and what is normal, and having scars on your wrists is not normal. Like, we're taught that is abnormal, that is you're just labelled as crazy. But the reality is, more people struggle with self-harm than you realise, because you've got the population of people who are self-harming and they're covering them up because they're still actively self-harming, and they don't want it to be a big part of sort of their life. And that's sort of a denial phase of it. But it doesn't matter how long it takes you to come to terms with having self-harm scars, or scars in general. But I found that coming to terms with it personally and in yourself first is the first step in coming to terms and being able to feel comfortable enough to not have to cover them up. And for me, one of the big things was getting a tattoo over them. And tattoos aren't for everyone, but for me, having my tattoos on my wrists over my scars was mentally a process that I was able to say, I'm covering up the negative with something positive, showing that I'm moving on from that phase in my life. And for me, that was the turning point, pretty much. And although I said there wasn't a turning point, now I think about it, there actually was. Like, I got the tattoo, and then part of me was like, I don't want to ruin something beautiful with something so negative. Yeah, that's how I coped with it. All right, so that's it for today's video. I hope you've enjoyed, or at least learned something from me talking about coming to terms with my self-harm scars, and I will see you in the next one.